Everybody for tuning in to Coder Conversations once again. If you want to catch up on any previous episodes or contact us, visit us at www.codercombos.com. Today we have William Askew, creative director, artist, and much more. And I'm also with
Brian Russick, professional drummer, drum teacher based out of the Suffolk County, Long Island, New York area. If you'd like to book a lesson with me, you can find me at brianrussick.com.
It's a pleasure to have you on, William.
Thank you for having me. This has been quite an interesting ride to get here. Had a very
Awesome.
good day.
If you don't mind,
Awesome.
can you give us a little bit about your background? Like, what are the majority of the things that you do? Because it seems like you have quite a varied background there.
It's more of a timeline, and quite frankly, it's a full scope of things. But I've worked in education for the last 18 years. I have worked in marketing and design for the last 18 years, respectively. Uh, I got a passion and hobby for painting and illustrating, and I've turned that into quite a few gigs as well. And I like to play around with stuff, and I'm really good with computers because of video games, man. So
Nice.
So yeah, like most people they specialize and just pick one thing and stick with it. What is it about you that made you want to like dabble in all of these different fields?
so many opportunities just come my way, and I can't say no. I really should sometimes, but at the same time, I like to pay attention to the potential and growth and the impact. And that gives me the opportunity to really just dive in as far as it can go and support everyone who might be on a project. And if I'm soloing a project, then really it's just for fun.
So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your art background? What kind of projects have you worked on, and how did you develop your art skills?
Okay. Well, most recently, I made a decision to open up a studio in Fort Myers, Florida. So I'm currently working on a bunch of miniature projects to help grow that venture. Um, so we're doing like a GoFundMe campaign as well as taking on commission work. We're doing a small series called the Studio Sparks, which is a series of paintings, landscapes, where people can submit photos of their favorite places, and we'll paint it up, sell it, make prints, turn it into t-shirts, whatever the case may be, just to get to the goal. Um, then previous to, I guess I really enjoy portraits. It's where I got my start at. And what inspired that was my love for illustration. Favorite artists being Yoji Shinkawa and Inu Takahiko and Ashley Woods, two in which worked on the Metal Gear Solid series. Yoji Shinkawa being the art director for that series and is currently their creative director over at Kojima Productions. I fell in love with his work back in '98 when I first played the Metal Gear Solid series, and just watching the mixture between brushstrokes and digital, I thought was an amazing concept to kind of merge together because it's quick and effective. His background in robotic engineering was one of those things that I felt very drawn to, as I didn't grow up with an imagination, and science was my first love. I learned the arts so that I could get better at it. And so I found that by understanding the way that our physical world works around us, we can then extrapolate that and apply that differently into other fields, art just being one of them.
Okay. Okay. I guess, I just looking at your background, you have a lot of different skill sets. One of those being producing, another one being graphic design. What
Mhm.
would you say you prefer, or do you like both of them equally?
Uh, Graphic design is very like hands-on. It's very nitty-gritty and can be a little repetitive at times. Um, as far as production goes, I enjoy production. Like I've gotten a chance to run a couple of small teams for some projects and for some production houses. um, in the video realm, and it was a load of fun to organize and budget that out and do the reach outs and really set the tone of what was expected and what was needed. Um, that's a really hard thing to ask though, because I like both, right? Like I like being able to make sure things are
Yeah.
getting where they need to go, but I also like doing it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it keeps it fresh, when you have variety, you're not just doing the same thing every day. But yeah, interestingly enough, Yoji Shinkawa, that's one of my favorite artists as well. I got the Metal Gear Solid collection in the background, the art book.
Nice.
Nice.
Okay, I got to ask you, do you know if there's going to be a Delta art book for the re-release for Metal Gear Solid 3?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. I hope
Man,
so, though.
that's the only thing I want.
Who are some of your other favorite artists in the video game industry?
Ooh, Amano Yoshitaka.
Yeah.
From the Final Fantasy, the initial collection of Final Fantasy. Currently, he has a show out in Italy, and his work is phenomenal. Very heavy on fashion inspiration, very heavy in terms of just realistic dream time. The work that he did on Vampire Hunter D was phenomenal as well, and I take a great deal of inspiration from anyone who can depict, I guess, the idea of peak fiction in a storytelling platform.
Right.
Yeah, he has like a really unique kind of an impressionistic kind of style.
Hmm.
Let me see. I like, Akira Toriyama, obviously, he's no
Hmm.
longer with us. Capcom has a lot of great artists, like the artists from Street Fighter, Breath of Fire, etc.
Ooh, I can't forget about that Marvel versus Capcom.
Oh yeah.
There we go. There we go. Yeah.
um, so this makes me wonder, right? Like, how has art influenced the work that you've done
Okay.
throughout the course of your careers?
Did you want to start, Brian?
Oh, you can go ahead, Kev.
All right. So, like, initially, I was going to be an artist. I like to draw and everything, but uh, you just kind of realize something isn't for you I think with me, I always beat up myself. Like when I started drawing, I always found these imperfections, and so it just stopped being fun.
Hmm.
So I shifted over to finance, like accounting and all of that. I didn't really care for that. Finally, I ended up in software. But one of the things that I wanted to do with software, is like learn game programming. So, art ties into that as well. Like art is really one of I got a huge collection of art books in the background. Like that's probably one of the main influences in my life is just art. How it influences me today. Today I'm kind of working on more like web apps, so I don't really get to be super creative, but
Uh,
um, you
that's
know,
unfortunate.
I should get back into it.
Hey, I think that gamification has really taken a strong hold to different software applications recently in the last few years, but we have so much more room to grow as far as that goes. And there has been such excitement around indie developers in the way that they go about applying gamification to their programs. So I think there's a lot of hope there. And maybe you might be able to, like, sway
Yeah.
the powers that be in order to make that more of a thing. Um, I had spent probably about 4 or 5 years teaching game design, right? And I had children from the ages of 5 to 17 um, working on developing games, mini games inside of Minecraft using Java, and then creating their own blocks and own worlds, servers, and whatnot. Having kids code in Lua for Roblox Studios and developing their games that way, having them build out their assets in Blender and import them in to every game that they wanted to make, teaching them MIT Scratch and blockchain coding just for the basics. We even went as far as to do product design for creating merchandise and being able to showcase that in a virtual state before it launches to a market.
Oh wow.
And I have noticed, right, when when the platform is preset for success, and there is an idea already formulated, it's really easy to kind of riff off of that. But with some of the game designers that I've worked with, I have noticed that when it comes to the art itself, uh, they seem to get really caught up because I think part of it is not knowing how animation works, how frame rates work, how collisions work, and really what the movie magic behind the game is. Um, and I'm wondering, like, do you guys find this to be a common influence that happens in your industry? Like Brian, I know being that you work in music, um, is starting off with a blank slate the hardest thing in the world to do? Do you feel a bit like a lost in the process?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, my main thing right now is teaching.
Mhm.
That's kind of always been one of my passions. I've been teaching. I'm 38. Started teaching when I was 18, so it's been a while. It's been a while. I've done a lot of different types of teaching. I used to teach out of books primarily because I was teaching at a studio where the owner said, "Okay, you got to go over stuff with kids on a metronome." Drum Rudiments, Buddy Rich book. He had like a certain idea for what he wanted me to do because I was so young. I just like, okay, I would like to teach drums, but I kind of don't know where to start. So it's always been interesting, influences that have brought me to where I am today. I would say if we're talking about jazz drummers, someone like Tony Williams, he played with Miles Davis at 17. He joined his group. So I'm real into a lot of jazz. I mean, if we're talking about art though, like Picasso, that's like probably one of my favorites.
He was such a horrible person. Why? um, why Picasso? What is it about Picasso's work that speaks to you in a way that translates both visually and auditory wise?
I guess it's just the feeling I get when I look at the art. It
Hmm.
kind of, moves me in a certain direction.
Is there a particular feeling, or is it an abundance?
I was saying abundance. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. That gives me a little bit of a new insight in terms of how there's a bit of a divide between the visual and the audio, right? I found out something over the course of teaching that when Isaac Newton had developed the color wheel way, way, way back when, right? Um, it is in the same vein as piano keys from the majors and the minors, and that is how sound is separated in the same way that light is separated, which is how we get those vibrational attunements. And so I've always wondered, like, where is the major divide, right? And how that plays into, say, with a game like, I don't know, Near Automata, and how the music really transitions with each stage as you go in depth, and it fades into a new layer until you get to the final boss. And the atmosphere and how it creates a level of intensity and harmony. And is there is there a method to the madness as far as coding goes?
Um, yeah, like you mentioned, it's kind of easier if you already have something already there, like a base there, and then you're just kind of going in a direction that's already been set. Like I found, like, have you noticed, like during the PS2 era, mostly Japanese developers, they were dominating, and then once we moved to the PS3, it shifted to the West. I felt like the Japanese developers, they work well within limitations, like well-defined limitations.
Mm.
But once there was a lot more power available, a lot more freedom, they kind of struggle. Sometimes people operate better when they have a limited palette because it kind of forces them to be more creative. So when it comes to coding, uh, I think that if you're starting from scratch, you have to be inspired. You have to have a clear idea of what you want to make. Otherwise, you're just drifting because there's so many technologies, so many paths you can take. Like what framework do you want to cobble together and why? Like if you don't have that
Right.
vision of what you want to create, then you just start playing around. And I guess that's just the creative phase where you're playing around and trying to discover something. But if you want to be productive and get stuff done, you have to have like a fairly solid plan of what it is you want to do.
I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, what you're talking about, like possibilities, like you want to explore every possible angle that you could kind of like, dream up. And that kind of influences your work and how you kind of move forward.
Yeah, it's kind of like two phases. They have like the creative phase where you're messy, you're playing, you're trying to discover something new, you're trying to be creative and say, okay, this is what I want to create. And then, you might have like the in between, like the architecture phase. Okay, you know what you want to create. Now you're starting to assemble it. Like, okay, this technology might handle this and this and this. But then finally, you have the construction phase where it pays to be more organized and logical. And
Mm.
that's kind of like how I see the process. Um, the last one is more structured and organized, whereas the first, the exploration phase, that's where uh, you just kind of let your mind go wild. And I think that's more suited towards when you don't have anything, like you're just creating, you're just doing something from complete scratch. That's when you just have to let loose and be wild and not bound yourself by these limitations. But once you move to the other phases, then your mindset shifts, and yeah, you have to be more structured. So I think it just depends on the phase I'm in that kind of determines what I'm doing.
It's kind of like you're hitting it from every angle.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like depending on just different times, different situations call for different measures. Like sometimes, with the brain, they say like the left brain, right brain. I believe the left is the more logical, the right is the more artistic. So I think, during the exploration, when you're thinking of an idea, you're probably more right brain, which is the more creative, artistic. But then once you get to the construction, it shifts over to more so of the left brain. But overall, I think I'm more of a left brain, like kind of like logical person. That's why I never really went too far with art because I didn't have like the creative ideas flowing in my head. I would just sit there stumped like I don't know what to draw. Like I kind of know how to draw, but it's like what
Yeah.
is the question?
Right. Right.
Oh, I wanted to quickly address the message on the screen with Squared Mo. I 100% agree. Choosing one language and really just breaking that down really helps to understand the rest and how to arrange things. And Kevin, I totally, I'll second that as far as like a design process goes. Um, I've noticed with same working with a small business versus working with a corporation in terms of what their ask is and how they go about breaking down the design and what they want to be able to create for a marketing campaign, or if it's a brand guide or anything along those lines. It is getting essentially every inspiration that has led to that point and any competitors who have done something similar and referencing that and trying to pick apart what makes that unique IP or that unique title or that unique um, trademark spectacular and building from there. And the use of repetition, as long as we can get away with using the same mechanics, like very much like in a video game, using the same mechanics over and over again to the point where they become synonymous with that concept uh, is ideal for creating really great structure. And the process is always relative. Though, when it comes to limitation, it reminds me of Mega Man. Uh, when Nintendo first dropped it, I did an entire class lesson on this. Mega Man was only blue because of the limitation of the Nintendo, because it had more blue color variations than any other color. And it was the thing that stood out the most. And they kind of just stuck with it from there.
Yeah, they were really creative during the NES generation because the
Mhm.
palette of colors and everything else was so limited. But they, imagine they were able to produce some amazing things. The music, the art. Yeah, I think like sometimes when you have a set of limitations, it allows you to be more creative because you got to kind of work. I don't know what it is. What do you think it is about having limitations that really pushes like some people?
Hmm. Let's see. If I had to really put it into words, I think limitation breeds action, right? You want to go fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you do it together. So the more that you have, the more you can do ultimately. But without a sense of direction, there is nothing to do.
Yep, exactly. And I think now that I think about it, yeah, like you said, there's less other avenues you can like travel down. So you're forced to do something.
Hmm.
If you have, it's like you have a box of crayons, you have 12 colors. It's easy to pick one and start doing something with it versus you have a box of 2,000 crayons. Like you're gonna sit there like, which one should I pick?
Right, right, right.
And
Just had that situation earlier today. One of my students for this camp that we were at was complaining how he didn't have a pencil, and I gave him some pastels to work with, and he asked if he could have my pen that I had in my hand, and I like taunted him with it and told him no. He buckled down and he got to work as a direct result of that, right? Like being able
Yeah,
to acknowledge the limitations is also part of the battle.
absolutely. Like, I mean, when I think about it in terms of music, I kind of on a side project, I make video game music and I make it on a device called the Korg EMX1 Electribe. I don't know if
Mm,
you ever seen this thing. They call it a groove box. So it's a drum machine, synthesizer, and sequencer all built into one device. So
wow.
I found that, working with the limitations of that device made me more creative with the video game music that I was producing versus if I'm in something like a DAW like FL Studio and making beats in that. It's I don't know, I feel like you're using a different part of your brain when you're given the limitations, and that's kind of like where my head's at.
It's the critical thinking part. I could dig it. Oh, so Brian, now I got to ask you to like at some point you're gonna have to bring that machine on and show us how it works.
All right. Maybe one day.
Um,
yeah, I think it applies to coding as well. Like what is it like paralysis by analysis? When you have too many choices, you just sit there and think. Versus like, what? Maybe I should pick this. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should, like say like JavaScript, they have like 10 different libraries that essentially do the same thing. And you're
mhm,
just sitting here like, which one should I pick? Realistically, they all pretty much do the same thing, but you're wasting time trying to figure out which is the quote unquote best. Whereas if you just have this standard library, okay, we're gonna go with this, and then you just get to work.
mhm.
I think that's what like limitations do. Like they don't give you the chance to make excuses thinking about what's the so-called perfect solution. You just pick something and you do something. In life, you just have to do things. You can't sit around thinking all day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'd say tell that to the Buddha who just sat there and he thought about it for a while. He came out better and faster and stronger, but like at what cost, right? Um, I think that decision paralysis is a really severe issue when it comes to anxiety. But at the same time, if there's no yes, yes, it is a limited option when using a website. Um, when there's no stake in the game, if there's no recourse, if there's no attachment to the outcome, then action is all that there will be. Um, what would you say is the most difficult language that you've had a problem with when dealing with other coders?
Like, let me see. Well, pretty much my career was pretty much like JavaScript and TypeScript.
Mhm.
But I would say, like, just in general, dealing with other coders, the most maddening thing is, I guess, when people they're not organizing their code, right? Because you know it's going to make a huge mess later. Like, there's no standard formatting. So I was thinking about this today, pretty much. Like, a lot of the coding constructs, they're pretty much there to organize these little blocks of logic to, you know, like, this is why, like, classes and all this other things come into place. Like, you know, when you really think about it, coding is a simple thing. It's giving a machine instructions step by step by step by step by step. And, you know, programming languages, they're pretty much macros for, you know, machine instructions, right? And the
Mhm.
higher level you get, the more abstract, you know, the more macros, the more tasks are accomplished by less words. So, you know, when things are disorganized, when people are not taking time to think through the problem, because, you know, most of these languages, they're not that different. Like, most modern languages are C based. So you just pretty much got to take a little more time to understand this or that language, the syntax of it. But it comes down to the logic. Like, is this organized? Is it clear? Is it coherent? Are you taking time to produce clear code? Because if it's sloppy, you know, sooner or later it's going to make a huge mess. Like, for example, okay, have you ever worked with like Angular or React
I've seen it, but I haven't. I'm not touching that.
or Unity?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how, like, they have like life cycle methods, like on init, you
Mhm.
know, like, in the life cycle method, I prefer that people don't type instructions directly in there. Like, they need to put in a function and call the function in the life cycle method. Otherwise, you know, you can have you know, like like, let's just say on a init method that has thousands of lines of code, and, you know, once that happens, it's impossible to tell like what's going on and what's going to affect what. So just taking the time, abstracting it into a function, and then calling the function on the init method, it keeps it logical, and making sure that the function is appropriately named. Like,
Mhm.
give, you know, give characters weapons on start or something. Like, you know exactly what this bundle of logic does. You know what this bundle of logic does, so on and so forth.
Hmm. I 100% agree with that. I hmm. The way that Squared Mode had placed this, right? Uh, New developers, how do they know what clean code is without reviewing someone else's? I think really comes back down to the fact that, from my understanding, from what I've seen, I don't know if it's devs being a little bit too lazy on their end, or if they're just trying to claim ownership over the code to make it illegible so that no one else can take it over. Um, I've seen both sides of that, primarily from like a student aspect, and it's strange behavior, especially considering that they're usually team projects. But how do you deal with that? And how do you identify a clean template to kind of train a new dev on?
Okay, so if you don't have anybody to look over your code, like, if you have to just do it yourself, write something and return to it, or step away for about a week and return back to it and see if you understand what's going on. If not, you're probably creating something sloppy. You know, like, what you want to do, which is why, you know, like, you're starting to see more functional style programs. Is you want to create isolated blocks of logic that can stand on its own, right? Like, a function, if you input this, you're always going to get this out. Like, the function shouldn't be reaching into outer state. And, you know, this means that's what coupling is. You know, that's one of
Mhm.
the fundamental coding principles of clean code. You can read that book. There's a book on clean code. I forget what exactly it is, but they have books on writing clean code. And one of the things is not coupling code, meaning, okay, let's say you have a car. Um, if your steering wheel stops working, your engine shouldn't stop working. That means they're coupled. Like, okay, I put a cover on my steering wheel and it's affecting the engine now. That means it's coupled. One should not affect the other. So you need to create these isolated blocks of logic that are able to stand on its own. And if you put something in, you should always get this result out. That means what you're creating is something that's predictable and testable. And, you know, since it's predictable, you also know exactly what it does. And then if it's in this situation, you know it's going to return that. And, you have these different blocks of logic, and they speak to each other through interfaces, well-defined interfaces. And that's how you create like sustainable code. Like this function should not depend on this object over here. Like if this object changes, it's whatever's in this function, it should not change. So that's what it is meant, kind of like by these isolated sort of code. But if they are going to communicate with each other, there's an interface. Like you need to look like this. You need to pass in this information if you want to be able to communicate with this function. Like they don't affect each other, but they can communicate with each other. Did you have anything? Let me see what he said. Oh, okay, I don't know what that is.
So revolving around coupling, it reminded me of this one thing that I saw. Do you remember when Skyrim came out? Like the Elden Ring? I mean, Elder Scrolls. Ugh. I remember that they had a hard time removing the bodies from any fallen bodies. They would just teleport them and stack them all in one room, deep under the map. And would you compare that to an issue with coupling?
It's probably has something to do with that because why can't they just delete that object and it goes away? And another thing in program is called separation of concerns, right? Like say in Angular or just web programming in general, you have like the visual layer, like the HTML, etc. And you have the business logic. This is where stuff like the MVC pattern comes into play. Like the business logic should be separate from the view layer. And that way, or like making API calls is separate from like the business logic. So the reason for separation of concerns is you can easily identify what is doing what. Everything isn't jumbled together. Like okay, you see a mistake, like okay, I'm not getting the data I'm supposed to get, so I can go to these services that are calling the API, and that's where the problem is. However, if everything's jumbled together, it's like I don't know what's doing what. Like this is pretty much what a lot of these programming constructs are. They're ways to organize code in a way that you can come back later and understand where everything is, what's causing the problem. You're isolating everything and giving everything like kind of like a well-defined role and explaining how they kind of communicate with each other. That's where like you heard of like design patterns and stuff. Yeah, that's where a lot of these design patterns, they're ways of these programming mechanisms to be able to communicate with each other or interact with each other without causing a huge mess.
Valid. Thank you for that. Because that's been a troubling thought in the back of my mind for a while. Like, why didn't they just do like a clone delete after a certain timer for the death? Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably with art you could find like a similar thing. Like when I used to do art, you start off with the kind of like a skeleton, like the big picture. You're doing like big blocks, right? Like you're not like if you're drawing a human, you're not drawing the eyes, the eyebrows, the nose. You're drawing a circle to represent the head. Then you're drawing another big block to represent the body, and then you're slowly like layering details on top of that. I think beginners, they need to kind of have that in mind. Like, is the big picture correct? Because if you start trying to layer details onto everything, but the big picture is wrong, then it's going to blow up. It's not going to work.
It just means that you got a really broken perspective in the end. But
Yeah.
composition is very fun, and there's a lot to learn from it. So, what does the future of our industries look like in the next 10 years, considering all of the economic issues that we're dealing with today?
Brian, you want to take a crack at it, and I'll go after you.
I'll pass that on to you, Kev.
Okay, sure. So, like, with AI and all of this stuff, obviously AI can do. It can generate code. It can create a facsimile of what's being asked for. Like, oh yeah, create me something that looks like Twitter.
Mm.
But does it really operate like Twitter? Is it secure? Is it safe? Is this code actually doing what you expect it to do? So, excuse me, like just the act of writing code, like kind of like being a code monkey, producing the lines of code, that's going to be deprioritized over somebody who has a architectural understanding. Like they know how all the pieces fit together. One, two, they can verify what the code is doing. Is this really working as intended? Is this put in the database, the data in the database how it should? Is it doing it in a secure fashion? So that verification, also security, like, okay, just say you have this AI in 2 days, it produces this banking application. But if a hacker can just crack that application quickly and easily, who's going to want to use it? So, but if you don't have the people there that understand what is a secure application, then yeah, the company's going to have massive problems. But that's why I feel like this AI revolution, yeah, it's going to like eliminate a lot of the rote tasks, but like the higher level thinking, the architecture, security, etc., that's still going to exist. Somebody has to verify what the AI is outputting. So if you're able to demonstrate those skills, so I think like technologists, they're gonna have to go from being like coders, I'm a front end developer or whatever, to more like hire like architects, cybersecurity. You can verify or you can put together these applications, like a mixture of this kind of uh, like like putting together the application, like the design of the application, like constructing it, and then verifying the results. Like that's going to take priority over just writing lines of code.
Mhm.
I got a question for you, Kev. So we're talking a lot about art and programming. So with your art background, do you feel like it's helped you as a programmer kind of move through the ranks and learn different technologies? Is there any link to having that art background?
Yeah, like the thing that I learned about art is you have to think in terms of the big picture first, like kind of like scaffolding, right? Like, okay, you want to draw a guy on a landscape. You don't start like drawing the guy's hair, then you're drawing his shoes. Like, you kind of like put a general picture, like a placeholder of this guy, placeholder of this tree. Before you get into the details, the big picture has to look correct. So architect and application the same way. Before you start picking a database, before you start picking these exact technologies, the big picture of what you're trying to create, that has to be in place. And then once that's in place, you can more effectively construct a solution. And that is called like filling in the details, right? Like you start with a big, vague general picture. There's typically that's like an architecture diagram. That's the parallel between art and software. The architecture diagram, and when you're drawing, you have like kind of like it's not like a stick figure, but more like a mannequin. Like if you're drawing a tree, you don't draw each individual leaf. You kind of draw a blob, cylinder here, and then once that looks correct, then you start, whittling things down and filling in the fine details. So it's starting with a big general picture, making sure that's correct, and then you can start solidifying the details as you start verifying the levels are correct. Okay, now I know what the big picture is. Now I know what the general technologies are. And then that's when, once you have that in mind, then you can start actually typing and creating the code. But if you go out of order, you just start, wheeling and dealing. That's when uh, you create something that might work, but it can have huge problems down the line.
Hmm.
Right. So, William, I mean, I would say same thing, same question that Kev got. How would you explain your process when it comes to building something from architectural level, where you're just starting off with, the scaffolding, just the basic stuff? What program do you decide to use, and why do you use it? And what is the overall outcome of those choices?
Mm. Well, I'm an old school Renaissance guy, so I'm using a pen and I'm using paper, right? Thumbnail sketches all the way. Um, let's say I have to build out some templates, right? Just something easy, flyers for a company, or even having to do like a brochure, a catalog, video game design, landscapes, whatever the case may be. I'll just take a sheet of paper. I'll block out some sections in a grid shape. I will do thumbnail sketches and I will write the positives and negatives, right? I'll verify that with some UX in terms of user experience, um, based off of studies to kind of back it up. And I'm thinking, as I develop, right, like it really depends on what the ask is. If I have to do a brand guide, I'm using like the Adobe suite just to quickly transfer information back and forth, right? If I got to transfer a file from Illustrator to Photoshop to InDesign, uh, then if I need to, I don't know, make a motion graphic, um, I'll use Premiere, After Effects, and Blender. If I need to do an animation, I'll use Blender and Premiere, sometimes After Effects. So my process is very, very much predicated on my experience. And so I will leverage those skill sets in limitation for what I know works the most effectively, that allows me to get at least a majority of what the ask is. Doing too much can be a little bit dangerous. Doing too little is failure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Squared Mo, he asked the question, what do you think of managers continually challenging junior engineers if engineers already have work deadlines for tasks and cutting into their learning time?
Oh, that's bullying. That's workplace bullying. Um, like it's valid at the same time, like for a hazing, just as a manager who feels like they may not have a great candidate or may want to test to see if they have the chops to kind of complete the task. Um, is it an asshole thing to do? Excuse my language. Absolutely. Um, Personally, I just like the more direct approaches. If someone wants to challenge me to a thing, then just challenge me to that thing directly. Hey, you want to do a draw off? You want to design a game together? I bet you I could design this door better than you. Okay. Like it's not. I learned a good saying recently. Take what you do seriously, but don't take the situation seriously.
Yeah, I was also say like from my experience, you're gonna think like at work, man, they're playing with me, they're messing with me. But if they give you something hard and you knock it out the park, you've just established yourself as a go-to guy. Like if you continually do this, and you're gonna move up really quick. Like they're putting something challenging on your plate. They're not putting on this other guy's plate, and you do it. Oh, hey, I want you to man this project. So you might have to spend time after work, but do it. That is if you really want to move up.
Hmm. I will say that sometimes that does backfire as well,
Yeah.
especially in smaller organizations and smaller teams where your superior may not have a superior. And if you upshine uh, and they can't take the credit for it, or
Yeah.
they feel like their ego is actually hurt, it will jeopardize your positioning. And so it's really important to navigate the landscape, right?
Yeah.
Understand what your resources are and leverage the best that you can.
Yeah, that leads me to ask a question to you. You know, like I know engineering types, we kind of just want to show up, solve the problem, and leave. But there's the reality of office politics, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
like, what are some of the office politics that often hold engineering types back because they don't want to quote unquote play the game?
Hmm. I'm not the best person to ask this because I get into a lot of trouble all the time. That's why I do contracting work, man. Uh,
Yeah,
I do want to just show up, fix the problem, and leave.
right.
Um, I don't like the idea of an hourly job. I like the idea of a project-based price, and I'm gonna just come in and do the job and leave. Don't ask me any questions unless they're pertinent.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that viewpoint. I think, like, from what I've seen in corporate America, sometimes you have people that are not that technically inclined, like they're okay, but they're schmoozing with the boss. Like they're great at communicating, making everybody laugh or whatever. And for whatever reason, you're like, man, why is he getting the promotion?
Mm,
So, sadly, even though we don't like to, the social element is real. Like people judge you based on how you look, how you talk, how you socialize with others, and not doing that, you could still have a job, you could still get by, but you're going to be locked out of certain opportunities if you don't play that game.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think a good way to get around having to play that game is to be um, radically accepting of all persons and the way that they carry themselves. Understand that they are people too, just as we are. And as we have hard days, they also have hard days. As we walk into an office with a chip on our shoulders, so does everyone else, regardless of their standing and position. And there is no heavier weight than to be at the top of a company and recognize how close it is to crumbling any given day.
Right, right.
So, with that being said, just have some grace and really just be the best support that you can be, right? Like as much as much of an issue as I do catch for just showing up, fixing problems, and then leaving, I do make a really good impression with the impact, because if there is a problem, if there's one problem that's fixed, then if there is another problem, maybe I can come and fix that too.
Right. Exactly. Square Mo made an interesting point. He said, like, in business meetings, a lot of times the engineers, they don't speak up. So I know a lot of engineers, they might have social anxiety. So
Mm,
how do they get over that social anxiety and actually speak up and take a lead?
man, okay, so there's it's really funny because I've been on this kick of relearning social cues and um, doing deep dives in terms of psych studies as far as movies go, right? And I think The Godfather did a really great job with this. There is a particular scene, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I can give you the message on it. And the idea is when you are in the middle of a meeting, instead of jumping straight into the meeting or straight to the meat and bone of it, um, offer a kind gesture, whether it's a word of encouragement or a snack, right? Just something to lighten the mood and give the person the opportunity to accept. Um, even though it feels rather empty in the moment, it's meaningful in the sense that it is a quick reminder that we are here with favor and support in mind. Um, and when it comes to being in a team meeting, because I know that can be a little anxiety inducing, stop thinking so much about the future. Just be present.
Yeah.
And if there is something important to say, say that thing. If there's a joke to crack because the opportunity has arrived to lighten the mood, do so. Don't take it to the extreme, but just a quick little whip, like a quibbit.
Don't take it to the extreme. Exactly.
Hmm. And everything works out just fine because there's always going to be a fire some way, somehow. It is not our job to finish all of those or extinguish all of those in one day. And when we come back in the next day, we get back to it.
Yeah, I think especially software industry, it's all about psychology, like not getting psyched out, not overthinking, not getting into a negative headspace. Because
Mhm.
once you do, then it starts like building on itself, and then eventually you get psyched out and quit, or you burn out. Um, like I know, like you're probably doing like a lot of very challenging jobs. How do you avoid psyching yourself out? How do you avoid getting overwhelmed?
Acts of kindness for myself and for the people around me. And I received that in turn. Um, and it's just nice, like I don't expect anything. They don't expect anything, but we do it anyway.
Hmm. What about you, Brian? Like, how do you avoid psyching yourself out?
I mean, we're talking about here social anxiety. I have extreme social anxiety. So when I think back to when I was working in offices, I used to do sales, insurance, and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
if I was at an office, in person and in a meeting, usually I would just stay quiet because I don't want the attention on me at any one point in time. If there is something really important, I will speak up, but in general, I would kind of lay back just because that's like my personality.
I feel that.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to your mentality. Like, say, for example, sometimes you got to shift your mindset. Like, okay, if you want to be more in a leadership position, you almost have to think of like you're on the battlefield. If you just sit and kind of wait for things to happen, you might not get the result that you want. So in that case, okay, I'm going to force myself to be more active. Like, you can't necessarily control your emotions, but you can say, I'm not going to let this stop me. Like even Mike Tyson said before he got in the ring, he was full of fear, but once he's there, once he's up and going, the fear disappears and he performs. I know it's been like that for you too, Brian. Once you like get on the podcast, you're ready to go, but prior to, you kind of feel those butterflies.
Yeah, there's definitely anxiety, performance anxiety there, but kind of like we meet the guest in the pre-room. We kind of get talking a little bit, kind of talk about, okay, we're going to focus on X, Y, and Z. At that point, I just kind of relaxed because I realized, okay, all the technology is working. Me and Kevin are both on. Our mic volumes are good. Like just all the technical stuff, that all being taken care of. Then I can kind of relax and sit back and just focus on the conversation at hand because, as a lot of you guys listening know, we improvise every show. We're not sitting here with 20 questions asking someone, oh, where did you go to school? What was your first job out of school? We're not going down that lane. We're basically following people down the lanes that they want to run down. Like if someone wants to go into a cul-de-sac, we'll follow them there. We might pick them back up, but we're going to follow them into that cul-de-sac because it's part of the improvisation that we do.
Mm.
So, like, okay, for my final question, Brian just mentioned improv. So that's something that you can't necessarily prepare for like directly. Maybe you can have some like general preparation, but since it's improv, you're not like having a list of prepared questions. So how do you handle situations where you can't prepare, like you don't know how it's going to go? How do you like at least come ready? How do you come like prepared to handle that?
Oh, so my process for dealing with, I guess, spontaneity is really just doing a quick resource check, right? I can't change who I am and what my experiences have been, but what I can do is leverage them. And take, for example, with Coders Convos, I got a chance to review a lot of the work that you've done, um, looked into both of you, and really had a moment of appreciation to recognize that regardless of what we talk about, we'll have a great rapport. And that is how I carry into everything, right? Like you just do a little quick prep work and just run with it, right? Because at the end of the day, we'll carry ourselves the same way that we wake up in the morning. We have that first draw of breath, we make that coffee. It is not something that we'll always do in order as far as how we carry our days through, but it's all within a scope.
Yeah, great answer. Let's see. Mo, he got a question. I used to be more vocal, but after yearly reviews of performance reviews not reflecting compensation, I switched to relaxing, creating work life balance more than not taking on more work than I need to. Yeah, that's
Uh,
understandable.
Yeah.
you know what? I think at that point, just be a little bit louder. Be a lot more vocal.
There you go. Yeah,
Because
there you
at the end
go.
of the day, right, like you're still going to get the same amount of work and people are still going to look at you in the same way. And you have the ability to say no if it is outside of the scope of your contract for employment. And by being more vocal, you can address the elephants in the room while still maintaining competency. And just remember that people are promoted to their competency level. And if you are dealing with a supervisor who is incompetent, um, they don't want to be upshown and they don't want to be called out, but you can at least make the team aware um, that there are things that could be worked on, whether it is from the cultural aspect on a micro or a macro scale, um, the process in which deliverables are getting out and the workload is coming in. You can deal with your project managers revolving around that. And really just, I guess, don't forget to record things and send it to HR and a nice booklet document if they ever try to pull anything.
Yep, exactly. And I think, just to piggyback off of that, just because it's not benefiting you in this current job, you're building a portfolio for your next job. So while
Mhm.
you might be kind of overworked at this job, if you're learning new skills or if you're put in a role that is beyond your title, you're creating a resume for your next job. Like, let's say you're a senior programmer now, but they're kind of having you manage, look at the other team members. Hey, mentor this junior. Hey, I want you to create these Jira stores. You could be like, oh man, that's not within my job scope. I don't feel like doing that. Or you could do that and you're gaining new skills that's going to enable you to move up because you can say, I did that.
Right.
I just found
Yeah,
a way to have fun with it no matter what.
yeah, exactly.
I mean, when I think about all of this and I apply it to music, I think about, okay, get to the studio, student arrives, we start to get into it. Maybe we start with the metronome or maybe we start with songs. But I always, whenever I show them something, I say, hey, don't just come back next week with exactly how I showed it to you. Go ahead and push it to the limit. Go ahead and like let the chain come off because that's how you get better. You have to take one thing and expand upon it and bring your own style to the mix. Because if you're not doing that, it's kind of like, why people are just going to use a drum machine over you unless you have something to say. You have to have something to say when it comes to music. So I always push my students create, elaborate on what I'm doing, change up what I'm doing, and show me the next week.
Mm, I think that's a great ending statement right there.
Exactly. Did you have any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
You guys are terrific. I'd love to have a virtual chat and coffee at some point.
Oh yeah, most definitely. We'll have to also have you back on the podcast, and there's so much more stuff to talk about.
Fantastic. I'd love to talk to you again soon. Thank you to you and your viewers for having me on. And if you need to reach out at any point in time, Google me, Artist Emor, EMOR. I'll be around.
Absolutely, and we'd like to thank everybody for